Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee. As you will observe, Councillor Jameson is unfortunately not here. For some reason, he thinks celebrating his birthday. He doesn't really want to celebrate it here, and I can't understand that. I mean, what more pleasure could there be? However, I'm Councillor David Jones. I'm the committee's Vice Chairman. I believe everybody was here for the statements read out by Councillor Mrs Deadman concerning filming, so I don't intend to read those again. So we'll move straight into the main business of this evening. Apologies for absence. Councillor Jameson, obviously, and...
Yes, Councillor Jameson and Councillor Watts. Okay.
So, item 2, minute. We don't have minutes because they'll be presented to the next full meeting of the committee. So, declarations of interest. I'll just ask for the purposes of clarity that I serve on the Joint Committee as a member of the Dorset County Council, and I'm one of their 2 representatives on that committee. Which does have its uses in that I can convey the committee's wishes to this committee's wishes to them. Are there any further declarations of interest? There are no further declarations of interest. We move straight into item 4, which is to consider first of all the minutes of the last meeting of the committee. And then we look at what is forthcoming on the agenda paper, and there are a number of items which members of the committee may well find to be of interest. So, taking the items that were discussed at the last meeting, minute 23 on page 6. Now, I have to say that I pointed out to the committee that we have sent on each occasion our concerns into Bournemouth, but somewhere in the black hole that is Bournemouth Town, I beg pardon, somewhere in the efficient structure of Bournemouth Town Hall, our comments have been lost. I hope that this time, are we going to send them by record just to make the point? Can we send them recorded delivery to Bournemouth Town Hall, please?
Can I just confirm that Dan was obviously doing the minutes from tonight, so when he's completed the minutes, which will be probably by tomorrow, they will then be forwarded to Bournemouth Council, and they'll then be reported at that next meeting on the 20th of March. Yeah.
Okay, so looking now at the comments that were made, or the various points that were taken. Programme update, does anybody have a comment on that? In which case, structural change order. Now, obviously, this has been somewhat overtaken by events. The item 25 says that no final decision has been confirmed. Well, obviously, Mr. Javid has unfortunately confirmed his decision. Now, the details were set out at the 3 hollow bullet points. Now, reading the papers, it suggests that these may have been changed, but I haven't yet had any independent confirmation of this, that there will still be 2 members from the Borough Council who will sit on the interim executive, but the members of the Dorset County Council will continue to sit on the interim authority in our own right. So we will have 2 votes on that. Councillor Neil.
We also do have 2 parishes, and we have parish councillors, but they don't seem to have been taken into account on the equation of number of councillors.
The reason I suspect for that is that parish councils, in theory, and town councils will not be affected by this. So they will have no, they need no extra representation. One of the terms of reference of the joint committee, which this Borough Council asked for and in a token gesture was granted, was that the joint committee would work with the parish and town councils. It was mirrored on the Dorset example, who have obviously far more parish and town councils. I don't know what they intend to do about it. I suspect, knowing the policy, not a lot, but it's something that actually we can ask about.
It's just that we have these councillors and they've been ignored, and all of Bournemouth's and all of Paul's have been accounted for.
Yes, but they don't have any parish councils.
Exactly.
Can we ask, therefore, what steps the committee intend to take to fulfil, I think it's item A of their terms of reference? Okay. Yeah, okay. Anything further on this?
So just to confirm, because I don't think it's that clear in the minutes. So obviously the committee had a proposal that there'd be 2 Christchurch, 8 Bournemouth and 6 Poole, and then that bullet points after section 2.25 says that in response to the joint committees, the MHCLG identified the imposition of the following. So, but it only says from Christchurch 2 to 1, but is Bournemouth and Poole still 8 and 6 respectively?
Somewhere in the logic of the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, they think that a county councillor equates to a borough councillor, and therefore by, say, specifying 1 county and 1 borough councillor, they are maintaining the representation as 2. Obviously, that affects our internal arrangements. As I said, they did write to say we don't like it. I ask for my dissent to be minuted. Councillor?
Sorry, I may be misinterpreting this slightly, but when we look at the 21st of February joint committee meeting, it states that the composition of the shadow authority would remain as amended by the MHCLG as 125 members, including Dorset County Council, but it also says that the shadow executive will be formed in accordance with the joint committee's original proposals, which was 2 members of Christchurch Borough Council. I'm assuming that doesn't include the Dorset County Council, because at that point the shadow executive is not what we are now.
At the moment, the shadow executive and the interim authority do not exist. They come into effect the day after the structural change order is gains parliamentary approval at the end of a 40-day period. At that point, we have to see what the structural change order actually says. There is a draft order at the moment, and that is subject to change. The actual order will be laid on the, is supposed to be laid on the 28th of March, which is what, in 2 weeks' time? And when that happens, we will then have something to work from and know what our masters have in store for us. But certainly we're at the point now where this interim authority has this committee has no authority to take decisions. The decisions will be imposed by the ministry, but the ministry will certainly say that it is acting on the advice of the Joint Committee, except where, for its own reasons, it wishes to impose something. As I said, we're now at the point where they're saying, on the one hand, well, you can have 2 representatives from the Borough Council, and now they're saying, well, you can still have 2 representatives, but one must be a county councillor. Councillor Mrs. Jones.
Support Councillor Smith in that I think that the ministry has changed its mind yet again and gone back to the original. It doesn't seem to know what the left hand has agreed, and as further in the minutes there seems to be a change.
I'm wondering if on that point we could actually ask for clarification.
All I can say is that the county solicitor wrote to all the county councillors, and I think to all the county councillors, not just ours, and said that there would be 5 county councillors would have to choose a county councillor to sit on the joint executive. Now, as I said, I have had nothing. I would have expected, if it were a hard decision, that we would have got a letter saying, hang on lads, we're back to square one. I will certainly seek clarification from Jonathan Mayer, the county solicitor, and when I get it, I will email it around to every member of Scrutiny. Councillor Neil.
Just my feeling here that we've got 8, 6 and 2 at the moment. Surely there is an imbalance there, because it's just a dead heat if Bournemouth and Poole and Christchurch vote together. Bournemouth will still have the upper hand, probably as the chairman of the area, being the larger. So either Poole gets an extra member, or we get an extra member, or Bournemouth drops a member, just in the fairness of openness.
Again, unfortunately, the shadow authority is dictated strictly on terms of population. So this will be the balance of the county council, of the unitary councillors, if this is established, that the proportion will be 8 to 6 to 2 or 4 to 3 to 1.
When you look at the numbers in each of the wards that Bournemouth have got, and Poole, the numbers do vary quite considerably. And there's a number of wards. When you actually add the odd numbers up that are over or under on the alleged 4,000 per councillor, it actually works out more in their favour, so they do have an overbalance.
What they do is they take the actual population figure, and I've worked this out. Dr. Roger, who we met earlier in the year, has worked this out, and it's been checked by other people. The ratio is going to be 4 to 3 to 1. Now, we, in a 76 member council, as I understand that they are thinking in terms of, then Bournemouth will have 1 seat less than Christchurch and Poole combined. However, the chairman of the interim executive, as I understand it, at the moment is likely to be nominated by the structural change order. Councillor Smith, have you further information on this? And the try and get this right. But the key thing, and I would ask members to bear this in mind, is that this balance is illusory, because there will be one Conservative group covering all of the, or it is intended that there will be one Conservative group. Now, one Independent group, one Liberal group, one Labour group. Following the election, if we project 2011 as a more typical year than 2015, because there was no general election in the way, you are likely to wind up with something like 40 Conservative councillors, I think something like 30 and a bit Liberal councillors, and then odds and sods. So there will almost certainly be, the Conservative group will be the controlling group. And this then leads us to look at the statements by Councillor Beasley that there will be no political divisions in the new authority. So councillors will not be expected to vote as Poole councillors or Christchurch councillors or Bournemouth councillors, but will be expected to vote as Conservative councillors or whatever. Now, there is also another provision, which is that the first loyalty of a councillor is to the authority for which he sits as a whole. So it could be argued that a councillor who said, I am always going to vote for the interests of Christchurch, may be accused of not carrying out his duty, which is to consider the interests of the whole authority. And this is one of the points that I have been making for the past 2 or 3 years now, that a councillor elected for Christchurch will be expected to support the interests of the unitary authority as a whole. Obviously those members who, and I'm not going to be sitting on the unitary authority, those members who wish to sit on the unitary authority must consider their consciences on this point. Councillor Mrs. Smith.
My sort of question stroke comment was actually somewhat along those lines, in that obviously this executive is only for a small amount of time, and actually potentially the end goal could actually mean there were no members of Christchurch Borough Council on the executive, because presumably that structure won't be maintained once we are one unitary, because then Christchurch Borough Council won't be there, so we will be members of the unitary and not of, and therefore can't guarantee those seats. We could have more, we could have less.
That is quite correct. Speaking for the county council, where we have similar sort of geographical distances, it is considered a wise leader that balances his cabinet geographically, but you don't have to. And again, if you have cross-border wars, if these emerge from the process, you could find, for the sake of argument, that a far west ward for Christchurch could include, for the sake of argument, a chunk of Iford. And in which case then you could say, well, a councillor for Iford would represent Christchurch. But as I said, these points were raised, these points were made very clear, and I think our residents appreciated them, but there is nothing you can do about it. That's the way it goes. A town council, of course, does have the right to tolerate that it can fight for its own town, and it can do, although it has little power, it has considerable influence, and that then can be used to try and weight decisions. Noisy, vigorous parish councils can do an awful lot, as even at our level we have experience of. Anything else on this point? Okay. Sorry?
It's the first time I've been called up since Scots.
Well, it could be said if you were down in the cricket batting order that, no, I won't say that. Shut up, Jones. Disaggregation update. Any questions on this or any comments on this? What concerns me yet again over this is that we are not being given the figures. They are saying that they expect that the figures will be brought forward in eventually, but we need them. The point was made 2 nights ago that Hampshire had said, no, they don't want you. That wasn't quite correct. What Hampshire had said is, we can't judge whether you will be it will be a good thing or a bad thing, because we need to know how much you pay into your county and how much you cost your county. In other words, how much could we kick into Hampshire's coffers and how much would we take out? And unfortunately, those figures aren't available. There it is. So again, we have this problem, and this I have to say, that we proposed that in the interests of openness, I proposed, and Councillor Brown from Poole seconded, that the membership terms of reference and the papers be published as soon as possible. It was very interesting to see all the Bournemouth and Poole councillors immediately going into clamshell mode and saying, no, we can't publish this, you can't let the plebs out there have the information, they might decide something on the basis of it. And 14.4 was then taken forward, and unfortunately, as I've said, this is part of the secrecy that's, in my opinion, has bedeviled this whole process from the Hands Across the Sands on August 2015 onwards. I think the next one is organisation and development. Sorry, Liesl.
Sorry, I'm a little confused. So you put forward a recommendation that the papers be published. Yeah. So the actual decisions made, recommendation 2 says that the Task and Finish Group on Disaggregation considers the matter of bringing forward the information considered at the Task and Finish Group meetings for publication in consultation. Was it a difference in the wording that was the problem? Because obviously they are saying here they're going to consider bringing it forward, or was it just that they weren't actually bringing it forward? They were just considering it. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I just want to check on the wording, and that's the reason why.
What I was saying was, we want to see who is in the membership of these task and finish groups and what the papers are. We wanted to see the papers. So, like, if you have a committee, the papers are published before the meeting. Task and finish groups aren't. And it really is in its attempt to get round the requirements of the Local Government Act 1972 that says all information should be publicly available and you're only allowed to have pink paper a certain number of things. But this lot just, whatever it is, it's done behind closed doors. Councillor Hilliard.
Just on that point, that I did notice in the agenda, the last point, there was on the sheet to save a task and finish group, because people for input, whatever it was termed, it was the officer and all the task and finish group were listed. Because if they are there, you hope they're contributing. So yeah, I would obviously request that all cover sheets have that, who are members.
Okay, so that's the minutes and what we've done, and I think we made a point. Would the committee like to express its concern about the excessive secrecy under the operation of this joint committee and the fact that information is not being made public, and there is bound to be a certain degree of suspicion in the public mind as to why this information is not being made available as soon as possible? Paul?
I don't think we need to go that far. I think the meeting obviously has task and finish group updates. Yes, they might be selective, whatever, the programme updates, board updates. So there are updates. And I think we've just got to rely on that. That is the position. They are telling us how far they've got on those subjects.
Is that you don't know what the task and finish group talked about before. All you know is the output, and we really would like to see what they have talked about. They don't publish the minutes, they don't publish notes of the meetings, they just say, they just produce what they want. And to my mind, this really is against a culture of openness that we're trying to promote. Paul?
Just coming back to that. So obviously, if we go to outside committees, like go to the Stour Valley audit, I can feed back. Are you able to feed back from a task and finish group?
If you have a task and finish group, yes, you can come back to the committee and say, this is what we talked about. But again,
for example, if David Flagg was on a committee, could he independently come back to Christchurch?
hopefully, yes, if there was something there. But what I am concerned about is that they must have papers on which they make their decision. It's the information on those papers that we don't get to see. What we get to see is the decision. And the decision could be, let's take a silly example, that we send somebody to assassinate Mr. Putin. But you then want to know what was the information that led them to take that? Where was the risk calculations? Where were the evidence that was needed? Where was all the points that were considered? Similarly, when they come to talk about, and I think they I am a bit concerned about some of what they've been talking about the mayoralty. They came back and said to us, we want the charter mayor. We believe in the whole of Greater Bournemouth that the best thing to do would be to have 3 charter trustees. Yes, okay, but what about us? We need to know what that is based on. Denise first, then Liesl.
Point, Mr. Chairman, in that, could I ask, are elected members allowed to attend the task and finish group?
No. They're closed. I asked this at the first meeting. Could these task and finish groups be open to other members of the joint committee? No.
My question's, I'm not sure if it's a question or a statement. All of these task and finish groups have a member of our council sitting on them, and the number doesn't matter for this question. Therefore, surely we should have the respect for their experience to actually rely on them sitting in that task and finish group, and if need be, reporting back anything they have of concern to us as a scrutiny committee.
I accept that point, and I would hope that was the original point discussion, that our two members would come to these groups, and unfortunately they haven't. But when you consider, Councillor Mr. Jameson said she can do 3 and 4 meetings a day, that they, again, rather stupidly, they would not allow substitutes. So, well, rather stupidly from our point of view, from their point of view, it might be quite sensible. But what I am concerned about, and to come back to my original point, is I would like to see the papers published for the task and finish groups. Just as when we have a task and finish group, there are papers, I'd like to see those made available publicly. That's why I was saying I want them published. Would the committee agree to express their regret that this has not been done? I could say silence gives consent, but I'd rather have a more positive response. Councillor, right, that's agreed. Is there any dissent?
I don't completely agree at this moment. I think whilst, yes, I'd love to know everything that's going on and every conversation that's being had, and I think it's important that people know we do have representatives there and they are very capable and experienced, and therefore I am happy with their work.
They don't always, they get voted down all the time, so it doesn't give a lot.
My concern on this question isn't the voting, my concern is the information.
I just want to ask, how many actual task and finish groups have we got doing this now? There seems to be an unending stream.
I think that there's something like 10 or 11, and it is an awful burden on David and Trish. Okay, can we move on then? I take it that there's not going to be a lot of discussion on programme update. sit in the same way, for example, as a school that had funds of its own, but was due to be changed to a comprehensive, say funds that have been bequeathed to it, they could do what they want with it, and they could still do that on the, but the reserves, the capital assets and such like do not, you cannot dispose of them without the consent of the interim authority. This could have consequences for us if, for example, we were looking at a town council and wanted the town council to have the mayor's parlour as its headquarters or as part of its headquarters, ceremonial headquarters, whatever.
My understanding is it doesn't include buildings. It only includes things like the robes and the chains and the maces and things like that.
No, what I said was, if we wanted to after the date of the order, if we said we want to transfer the building to the town council, we couldn't. If before the date of the order we wanted to do something with that, we could do, but and it's got to be done before the date of the order. Well, or you've got to have some form of trustee body that you can hand it over to. Like the Regent Centre is in the hands of the Regent's trustee, Regent Centre trustees. So, again, we're looking at this. I think the first one, yes, we know that's going to happen. This happens to, in any authority, it happened to people working for the council's waste people when they were tupied over to Dorset. So we need to check on this, and I think this is a note which we should recommend, maybe through scrutiny, that we need to check if there are any particular assets that we feel we should try and safeguard for the future. Now, again, continuous and responsible, that's obvious. Now, Code of Conduct Matters, Charter Trustees and Pent provisions relating to ceremonial matters. Again, that comes, that I think the town councillor comes later on in here. And again, you can see the odds and the paragraph 6. But I think the concern that we have to, again, when the statutory instrument is laid before Parliament, it will become law. No, it does not. It is 40 days. Now, there is only one exception if they can use it, is that there is a certain type of order that you can lay and it becomes law, but if there's a negative vote in a period of 40 days, then it is annulled. So I don't know exactly which process they will look at, but they don't normally do this type of statutory instrument, Liesl.
Sorry, going back to protecting things such as the mayor's parlour that we may wish to protect if we were to have a town council. Surely, are we not covering this in our community governance review? And is there not a task and finish group?
Yes.
So we do have a group looking at this.
Yeah, but
and
this is
looking at the
something
potentials
that ought to be looked at.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just wanted to make sure that we, as a council, are actually doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think, could that be reminded that we go on, that this be noted for consideration by the task and finish group looking at the town council? Councillor Hilliard.
Thanks, Chairman. Just again on that cover sheet where it says who contributes, it sounds as though the MHCLG contribute a lot and possibly might impose a lot of this direction. And for me, it's a bit unclear how the task and finish groups works with MHCLG to get an output which will go into these orders.
in some ways, this is very new ground and hasn't been done before. The whole thing was done as a pilot order to encourage people to talk together. It's been hijacked, probably by civil servants who like this sort of thing, to push through a merger. But you're dealing with the merger of two unitary authorities and a chunk of a county council. But normally, if this had been done as every other one has been done, in May of this year, we would be electing the we'd be all voting for a shadow authority. The shadow authority would therefore have a democratic mandate, but it wouldn't take up its powers until April next year. So it would use that time to negotiate with the new elected authority with its own mandate, would use that time to talk to the councils that were being dissolved and to say, look, what, you want the town council, okay, what do you want to transfer? But this is having to be done in a very odd and not terribly helpful way. So there's an awful lot of it that we don't know, but we just have to keep on. In a way, I'm afraid it's suck it and see.
Item 11 is their task and finish group for the
Ceremonial.
ceremony on the mail.
Yeah. There is one other thought which somebody might come up with. A reorganised local authority that includes an area that was a chartered borough can apply to the Crown for a charter for the new borough. So it is possible that the new authority might wish to apply. It intends obviously to be treated as a district council and not as a county council, so it could apply for a charter as a borough in its own right. And then again, you're into a different ball game. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, charter. Yes. Can we move on to the medium-term financial strategy? I don't think we're going to be able tonight to come up with any detailed answers to this, because it looks guaranteed to give headache producing, and not only because it's in such tiny print. Anybody desperate to go through this one? Okay, so we go to council tax harmonisation. Now, again, this is something that is a major concern. Now, looking through this, they are saying the variables, the period over which council tax harmonisation could occur, the impact of a town council precept in Christchurch. Now, the key thing here is that do we wish to support our leader and deputy leader in pressing for day one harmonisation? Councillor Mrs Jones.
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
This council voted for that in full council. So the leader and deputy leader are actually doing that. They're not getting very far, but I think a stern letter needs to go back to the committee, because they're not really taking much notice of what this borough council wants.
Yes, I see they're still talking about 7 years, but that on 11, on paragraph 11, but that is their interpretation. The last concrete wording of this was that it is, and even in Saji's letter to David Flagg, I don't think anybody could read that as thinking in terms of a long period of harmonisation. I think saying there is a balance to be struck indicates it's going to be a pretty short harmonisation time, and that is going to throw all of their figures completely out. Is it your wish that we write, the chairman or I write in the strongest possible terms to set out to the committee that we strongly, that this scrutiny committee believes that they should not be looking at any harmonisation period, but should, as it is a new authority, they should be looking at a single council tax throughout the area from day one. Councillor Neil. I would be, some members may be aware that it was not impossible that an amendment might have been put on the table on Tuesday to say that we withdraw from the joint committee because we're not being, they're not listening. I think it how shall I phrase this? I think it not impossible that such a proposal might come forward unless some progress is made, and I wonder if it might be advisable to notify the joint committee that, in the opinion of this scrutiny committee, there is a distinct possibility that a motion will be put to the Christchurch Borough Council to withhold payments until. We're not saying that it would happen, we're just saying there is a distinct possibility.
As a member of the committee, I would be absolutely against that.
Councillor Mrs Jones.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we can say that when this hasn't yet been put to full council. I don't think we're in a position to. But what I think we could do is reaffirm the council's policy that we joined on the understanding that we wanted harmonisation from day one. And that's restating council policy that has been passed, that has been passed, that has been passed. So we're not going against anything. We're not putting anything new. We're just simply emphasising, restating what is our council's policy.
Making threats of withdrawal, because I don't think that would be wise.
Mm-hmm.
What we are doing is reaffirming the position of this council, which is being ignored.
Can I suggest that maybe we write along the vein that of the 5 models that the Joint Committee is still looking at, it is a shame that one of those is not the harmonisation on day one, and could they please add that as a 6th and still please consider that, because that is this council's policy.
I'll be happy with.
Mr. Chairman, I have a query on there because on item 5, sorry,
emphasise our regret that we have not got, don't seem to be much nearer with any idea about disaggregation when it is so important to our residents, because there are a lot of vulnerable people out there who want to know what's going to be decided, and we are now at the point when we're 1 year away and we still don't know.
Sorry, I'm slightly confused because part 5, paragraph 5, it actually states that the first cut of all this data will be provided by the end of March, and then further work will be required to finalise. So presumably you're expecting figures at the end of March.
I would be a lot more confident if I hadn't been aware of the difficulties that they are having in getting these out. And I hope there is no further slippage. I'll be delighted if they come out by the end of March, but I think there'll be slippage.
Could we not say, therefore, Mr. Chairman, that we note that there is an intention to have some information by the end of March, but we would be very disappointed if this were not to happen?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just a bit unsure about paragraph section number 1. So what it's saying is that all service templates have been produced. As at 9th of March, 74 templates have been issued to officers in Bournemouth and Poole for analysis. And then it goes on further saying they're assisted in their reviews by representative from DCC. But there's no mention of Christchurch there?
Again, this is just factual, most of it, but I am concerned that they are trying to tell us what to do, and as I understand it, because we are still a sovereign council, should we make a decision that a parish council should be established before the order comes into effect, it will be for this council, irrespective, to make that order. I suspect, but I don't know, it will still be competent for this council to make the order after the structural change order comes into effect. So really it's our business, not their business. But before I say that, I'm going to want the legal opinion, which I can get. A lot of this, again, is we are moving through it now. We're publishing draft recommendations. And as I understand it, the end game of this, and to be as I understand this, let's assume for the sake of argument that a town council is established in Christchurch, and that town council encompasses all the wards of Christchurch except Burton and Herne, which have their own councils anyway. This council will then establish an interim authority for the parish council, so all members of this council who sit for the wards affected will become members of the town council until the election in the first Thursday in May 2018. So it will then be a precept will be set by the borough council for the emerging town council, and then the town council will have to consider that for the next year. Councillor Neil.
For 2 points. First, I wanted to say on page 54, number 5, first line, it says that the existing local boroughs date back to the 13th century. We go back to 1150, so it's the 10th century, not the 13th, and that is printed in there. But the other thing I want to go on about is the precepts. Sometimes you can actually alleviate precepts by having things such as the income from the car parks or the income from cemeteries and things like that. Some parish and town councils do get that in their makeup when they've been set up. So it's not always necessarily to put a heavy bill onto the public.
Now this is where we hit a problem. Let's assume that Christchurch is successful and the structural change order bites the dust and they have to go back to the beginning. We could then, having set up the parish council, the town council, the borough council could transfer the car parks to the town council. And so when, for the sake of argument, in 2021, when they get round to doing the unitary again, then Christchurch Town Council already has the car parks. But after June 2018, if the Borough Council wishes to transfer its car parks to the emerging Town Council, our dear friend Mr. Beasley will say, no, you're not, I want that. And we're shafted. So you have to rely on your precept then. You can then negotiate with the successor authority for the management of the car parks and the revenue therefrom, but I'll bet you your life you'll have to pay them. So authorities that now have their car parks and don't have them got them a long time ago. They probably got them in 1972 when the town councils were set up. And if that's the case, then yes, they won't need a precept. But I strongly suspect that anybody expecting benevolence out of the leadership of the Greater Bournemouth Council needs to go and see a psychiatrist. Any further comment on that point? Okay. On paragraph 5, which is the, we date back to the 12th century. No, 12th.
It was 1150 when we first.
Yeah, which is 12th century.
Yeah, okay. Well, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Yeah.
But I will gladly point out to them that Christchurch actually does date back to much earlier.
It's 1150. We don't have any information.
But the history of this burgh was dated, it goes back to the time of King Alfred when the burgh was created. Councillor Mrs. Jones.
You took the words out of my mouth, Mr. Chairman, and I think this is, the officer has done a noble piece of. Sorry, I thought I'd put it on. The officer has done a noble piece of work here, but I would have liked to have seen in 5 with the history of some or of the existing local boroughs dating back, because of course Bournemouth is very new and until relatively recently was a piece of heathland, uninhabited.
Seeking after hotels and things, should say that. Councillor Mrs. Jones.
But to be serious, Mr. Chairman, I think when you read this, it makes you want to weep. Having seen the regalia of Poole, which is obviously included in here with the swords and the oars and the wands and the halberds, etc. You've got two boroughs with a magnificent history being exterminated, because that is what it will be. And I think that is something for us to regret.
However, is there anything else on that? So we now move, I don't think anybody's desperate for future plan. The other item which I am asked to draw members' attention, I'm going to pass to Miss Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple of updates that I want to pass by you as well. We've actually got two special scrutiny and policy review committees now in the calendar. So that will be Thursday the 12th of April and Wednesday the 16th of May. So the Modern Gov will be sending those out to... So that's Thursday the 12th of April, and that will then feed into the 16th of April's Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Joint Committee.
Could I give my apologies for the 12th of April? I have exams.
And then the next one is Wednesday the 16th of May, which will feed into the 23rd of May's Joint Committee. Yeah, obviously both starting at 6 o'clock. Okay, moving on then to the Local Government Reorganisation and Shared Services Overview and Scrutiny panel. Councillor Jameson, the chairman, has agreed that there will be 3 members from Christchurch Council observing at that meeting, and that will be Councillor Colin Jameson, Councillor David Jones and Councillor Paul Hillard. The panel considers matters relating to local government reorganisation, services shared between Bournemouth and Poole, and the development of the scrutiny function. They would act as observers, but when I went to the last meeting, Paul were actually asked to come to the table and take full part in the panel as well. So I think that's what would be intended in future.
Sorry, could you just give me the name of that?
Yeah, it's called the LGR for short, and Shared Services Overview and Scrutiny Panel. Okay, so Paul already have 5 members that also attend that meeting.
I am happy to agree that we should attend. However, I do not wish that to be at the expense of our scrutiny function here, because again, we would be 5 out of 15 or 3 out of 9 or whatever, and I think we ought to be, what are we, 9 out of 9 here.
Just to confirm that the Christchurch scrutiny function would still exist and still carry on, this would be in addition to that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith.
And you can confirm that none of our 3 members would be compromised on either committee?
No, they wouldn't. I can find out if they can have delegates for that one. Those next 2 meetings...
Sorry, do we mean substitutes?
What time of day is that? Do you know?
So the next 2 meetings are, there's one at 11th of April, and that's at 6 PM at Bournemouth. And then the following one is the 17th of May at 6 PM, and again that's held in Bournemouth.
Why do I have the funny feeling that the world is becoming Bournemouth-centric? I think we should certainly invite them to come to the ancient borough, then they might learn a bit about history.
So then moving on to the next item, it's an invite to all members of Scrutiny and Policy Overview. The Centre for Public Scrutiny are holding a workshop at Poole Council next Wednesday, which I think is the 21st, and that's at 6 p.m. And again, that's Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. And Centre for Public Scrutiny will be supporting the councils in developing the overview and scrutiny arrangements for both the Shadow Authority and the new Unitary Authority. So all members are invited to attend and are encouraged to attend it if possible. So I think tomorrow the Centre for Public Scrutiny will be sending you electronic invites with further information to that item. Okay.
I must tender apologies in advance.
Yeah, there is a joint audit meeting next week as well, so some of you may not be able to attend for that reason. But yeah, that's March meeting. Okay.
Councillor Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the officer, it's not her fault by any stretch of the imagination, but why has this very valuable invitation been issued at such short notice when most of us have got quite busy calendars? Do they not want us to attend?
No, far from it. They want
not.
to encourage you to attend. I've only had today confirmation from the chairman of this committee that he would like that the members of this committee be invited.
He hasn't come across as yet, has he? I am going to be a little cynical. In most authorities, scrutiny is set up as a device to give backbench members something to do. It takes you, this authority and all the other option 4 authorities work very differently. We do ask questions, we ask awkward questions, and as members will be aware, thinking back over the last 18 months, we have made a big difference. We would never have, for example, have had any information on the intangible costs of the proposal had we not had a scrutiny committee that was independently minded and prepared to put its neck on the line. So yes, I think we should by all means accept the invitation, but we've got to remember. Sorry?
You said something else was on.
Yeah, joint audit.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And the and I think it's the that we have of asking questions. Fred always used to say scrutiny should be the opposition's committee.
It's always in some councils.
And in a way, that's quite correct. But unfortunately, in some other councils where there isn't an opposition, its main task is to ask the questions that the executive would like asking. So if we are able to freshen them up a bit, that might be helpful. Anything else, Lee?
Okay, I just want to confirm that that's Centre for Public Scrutiny is probably the first of several workshops.
Yep.
So if you can't attend this one, there will be other ones to attend. And then the other item, last item I have for you, is that Bournemouth, Poole and Christchurch want to set up a joint overview and scrutiny task and finish group on disaggregation. So before you is a set of draft terms of reference for that item. So what I would like from members is we can have up to 5 representatives on that committee. I have asked that it's actually, those meetings are held in the evening. So I'd like to agree the terms of reference within it, nominate up to 5 members, and then also delegate authority to that joint working group to make recommendations straight to the joint committee on disaggregation. At the moment, we think there may only be 1 meeting on that, and that will be held sometime in April, but there may be some after that. So at the moment, that's the information I have on that one.
I think Councillor Jameson should attend as a counter councillor. Unless there is any violent objection, I'd like to attend again as a county councillor. I
Actually scanned through this, and I don't believe you're allowed to attend because it says no member nominated will also be a member of the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Broad Joint Committee. I think we might need to check.
In which case, Councillor Jameson would be entitled to be a member. Neither Councillor Phipps nor myself would be able to be a member. But I'm sure I can attend as an observer. So that would leave 4 members. Do I see any volunteers? Councillor Neal? Councillor Smith? Do I see any further volunteers?
Can we nominate anyone? Can we nominate anyone?
So it might be better if I maybe contact someone like Trevor Watts, who's not here, and see if he'd like to also attend.
Councillor Hilliard, would you?
Yeah, I'll confirm what time they want it to actually start, but I have asked that it's an evening meeting.
Mm-hmm.
No, that meeting could be any time. It's the other ones that are on the Wednesday at the moment, so this one will be more flexible about what evening it could
Councillor Mrs. Jones? Councillor Mrs. Jones to attend. Councillor Hilliard?
Well, I see. Give Trevor, Councillor Watts, the benefit and see if not a balance.
Well, let's. Can I suggest that if those wishing to serve, we'd let their names go through to Lee, and Lee consults with myself and the chairman, and we can then, if we get more than 5 names, then we can take it from there and see where we get to.
Can I confirm then at the moment I've got Councillor Colin Jameson, Councillor Liesl Smith, Councillor Fred Neal, yourself as stood down, Councillor Denise Jones, and we've also got Councillor Wendy Grace. So if we're happy with that, we can go forward with that, and then if there's
But we
an
need
issue,
to check with the missing members if they are able to.
I'll contact Councillor Watts and see if he's interested, and then we'll take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
Quite sure if there's coffee available.
Normally have those in the daytime.
Well, ladies and gentlemen,
Sorry, can I just, can members confirm that they're happy with the terms of reference, and that to then delegate authority to the joint working group to make those recommendations straight to the committee on disaggregation?
we've always in the past as well said that we could open things to other members who might wish to attend, up people who've had experience on scrutiny but are not executive members. Well, we haven't got any executive members in Christchurch. So that may be, it may be that other councillors might wish to put their names forward as well.
Yeah, obviously in the first instance that would be offered to those that sit on the scrutiny committee, but if they weren't able to, then we would look at other avenues.
I don't suppose what our leader and deputy leader. They've got enough on their plate already, haven't they?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It has been a very long evening, particularly for those on planning who had half an hour's training before they came here, and thank you very much. And a day's work, which others of us have had a day's work and not been paid for it, but there it is. Can I particularly thank and ask it to be noted that we thank the officers, Lily and Daniel, because it's been hard going for them, and Daniel's had to switch from planning to scrutiny without much of a break. So thank you very much.